Good afternoon, and welcome to the Empowering Family Caregiver Show, brought to you by eCareDiary.com. I am Polly Whitehorn, your host for today's show. Today, we are going to address Seeing Alzheimer's Differently, a New Approach to Care. We are very excited to have with us Kathy Greenblatt. Kathy Greenblatt is a sociologist with a PhD from Columbia University. She is a professor emerita of sociology at Rutgers University and artist in residence at the University Hospital Network of Nice, France. She has been working to change the imagery of aging, illness, and dying by combining her background in sociology with her love of photography. In 2006, Kathy started work on a project photographing Alzheimer's care in the US, France, Europe, India, the Dominican Republic, and Japan. The images, accompanied by captions from carers and patients, are offered in her book, Love, Loss, and Laughter, Seeing Alzheimer's Differently. You can find more information about Kathy and her book by visiting www.kathygreenblatt.com. Well, welcome, Kathy. I'm so glad you're here. And I have to say, I saw this exhibit last week, and I was really touched by it.
It was wonderful to have you there. It made me feel a lot easier about today's show, saying you've seen not only the book, but also the big images. And they're two different experiences, really.
Okay, great. Well, I've got a number of questions here that I want to ask you. And first is, tell me about your book and the related photo exhibition.
Okay, well, the photo exhibition actually has a little bit longer life than the book has. The book was only published, can I show it to you too? The book was only published last week, so it's a new baby, but it's been quite a long time in the making. And the exhibits, there are two exhibition sets. One of them is in the U.S., and that began its life in March 2010 with a 6-month exhibit at the National Academy of Sciences in Washington. Mm-hmm. But at that time, it had photographs from 4 countries, and now it has photographs from 6 countries, so it's an expanded and updated version. The Europe version has been already in Glasgow for 3 months. It was in Madrid at a very large Alzheimer's center that was funded and is supported by the Queen Sofia Foundation. Then it went to Salamanca, a beautiful university town there, and it was in another place. And then it was in a very wonderful private art gallery in the center of town that's a very prestigious gallery. So it's been in places that it could really have the general public see it, and hopefully not just see it, but change their minds about the way they see Alzheimer's. Its last things was it just came from London, and it's on its way to Geneva, to the UN building, and to the World Health Organization.
This is very exciting that so many people are having the opportunity to visit the exhibit. Now, tell me, where did you first discover this approach to care, and how prevalent is it?
Well, the first discovery actually precedes the 2006 date that you have there. And it came as a surprise to me. I had been a very bad caregiver. When I was in my 20s, my maternal grandfather developed Alzheimer's, and I found it frightening. I was angry about it. I didn't understand what it was or how to relate to him, and I did a very bad job of it. So in some ways, this book and all this work is penance for it, because I believed what still many, many people believe, that once somebody had Alzheimer's, they were gone. They were empty shells. They were not really reachable. And the more I felt that, the more I found excuses not to visit and not to do things, because I felt so inadequate at the way I did that. In 2001, by accident somewhat, I visited a place in Southern California, Silverado Senior Living in Escondido, and I was completely bowled over by the fact that there was a different way to take care of people than what I had seen in quite expensive facilities where subsequently my grandmother was, that pretty much adopted that idea that they weren't there anymore. So you had to keep them safe and sound, put them in front of the television, don't expect very much from them. And the approach I saw was so exciting because people did different things. They treated them as people who still had capacities, and our job was to say, how do we find what they still can do and nourish that and help them to still feel good about themselves and about their lives. So I photographed there for 7 weeks, and I produced a book that was called Alive with Alzheimer's that showed what this approach was. How prevalent is it? Not nearly prevalent enough. There are places that do it, but they're few and far between. And when I did that first book, my idea was that people usually don't find out about care when you need partnerships with professionals until they're feeling pretty desperate. And that's not the time to learn about something. So I thought, well, they're not going to go look for places, so I'll take this place to them, not because they would go to that one place in California with 90 people, but because they needed to know this is what good care is, and that they can do it at home. And when they need to find a place, if they should, to get more intense care, that these are the kinds of things they should ask for and look for, and that could give people hope. So I wanted to take them on a journey.
Let me ask you, as you were going around to these different facilities, what was it that surprised you the most?
Well, let me back up a minute to the original book. That book also had exhibits. And I was invited to show the photographs in places. And since usually my invitation didn't come with a check to pay for the airfare and the hotel, but just the joy of having an exhibit and spreading the word about this, I'd say, well, if you can find me some really good places that help me show what good care is, then I'll bring the exhibit and I'll come with it. So I got to photograph in a variety of places, initially in Japan, later in India. I had moved to France, and so I was photographing there. And what was striking was that the illness symptoms are so much the same. I mean, that's the biological part of it. The stages people go through and the symptoms are very similar from one place to another. Maybe that wasn't surprising, but the surprising thing was that the qualities, the characteristics of good care were also the same, no matter where you were. It involves treating people with dignity, with respect, with smiles, with warmth, with hugs, with the kinds of things that help them to feel still capable, and with communication strategies that, if I had known, would have made my relationships with my grandparents a lot better than they were. So it would, if you think about music as an example, music is so effective with people with various forms of dementia. And the songs may be different. I mean, what we sing in India and what you sing in Japan and what you sing in Manhattan may be different songs, but it's the music that's important. And if we recognize the power of it and how to use it most effectively, that's a wonderful thing to discover, because people can do that at home as well.
Now, how did you find your subjects and the contributors to the book's text? It seems that you have this vast network. How long did it take you to build this?
Well, again, it was the first book that really produced the beginning of it, because the book came out, I hadn't even really read things about it. I said, this is just going to be my views of what I saw and how powerful I thought that it was. So it didn't have footnotes, it didn't have references, it was really my story of visiting this place. And immediately it got picked up by a lot of people who had been writing about this approach, a person-centered approach, since Tom Kitwood had written a book more than a decade ago. And they picked it up and said, wow, we've been talking about this, we've been writing about this, but we haven't been able to show people what it is. And you have photographs that really show this is what we do and this is the effect that it has. So they started inviting me places. And again, once they invited me, I'd say, okay, find me a place to photograph. So I showed the photographs in Cleveland at a conference, and I spent a week before that living at a place that was a specialized hospital, and some of the photographs in the book are from there. And the same thing in India. When I went, I photographed for 3 days, and they used those photographs in all kinds of publications and posters and things. And so you have to come back. We'll take you to 3 more cities and show you more. So really, it was the first book that provided the key to getting into many other places.
Yeah, I'm wondering if I can show a couple of these images to our audience. If this comes up before the camera, this is just a lovely photograph of Kathy's visit to one of the facilities in India. And I love this one from Japan. And Tell me, where was this one?
This is in France.
This was in France.
This is in France, and as I was saying to you before we started, with many of these people, look at them who don't know anything about the stories, although I tell the stories of them in the book and in the exhibit with captions, and they say, oh, how lovely, this man with his mother, or this woman with her grandmother. And in fact, the three photos that you've selected there, it's not somebody with a family member. These are loving professionals who know how to effectively help people have a high quality of life. And that's part of the lesson that I think people need to know, that if they partner with professionals from early on, they can get so much guidance and so much help about how to more effectively do the things that they need to do at home.
Okay. Just tell me a little bit about your decision to step down as a professor in sociology and embark on this career as a photographer. And how does your unique background as a social scientist inform your work as a photographer?
Okay. Well, this is going to sound very funny, but I think my decision to retire when I was 61 probably came from an experience I had when I was 15. So it was obviously long before I had the profession. But I had seen the exhibit of The Family of Man in New York at the MoMA, and it had such a powerful effect on me that really had me convinced that there are some things that if we see them, we understand in a different way than if we just hear about them or read about them. And so I developed a passion for photography, though I didn't do much of it. And that passion had me say, I want to do some work sometime when I have time, which I never had, that will help me marry the understandings of how to gather data and understand things that I have as a sociologist with photographing, and be able to show people something that I also talk about. I didn't want to get rid of words, but I wanted to marry those two. So some things in my personal life led me at 61 to decide that it was time to just do some. I was healthy after an illness. It was time to do something different. And that different was going to be that I was going to do some photography. And, this has turned into so much more than I ever dreamed it would. But really, it started in 2001, and here we are in 2011 or 2012, I guess we are. It's been a wonderful decision.
I'm so glad that you embarked on this project. I think anyone who sees the book or sees the exhibit can't help but be moved by what you've been able to capture. And I think it's just wonderful. Again, the name of the book is Love, Loss, and Laughter, and it can be ordered through Amazon. Yeah. And is there any other resource that
well, it can be ordered from your neighborhood bookstore or from Amazon, from Barnes & Noble. And if you are listening to this and you're someone who is looking for gifts to give to people or something for a training program, know that if you look at it and you find it appropriate, that you can, from the publisher, if you have 50 copies or more, get a 50% discount on it. So it's very, very affordable for that. And if I have the time to add it, it's one of the things that I'm very excited about from this publisher. From the start, they were committed to making the book available to people who might need it. And the contributors you mentioned are people with Alzheimer's diagnoses, family caregivers, music therapists, pet therapists, other people who really are adding to my words a great deal of wisdom and experience. And so they priced it at a ridiculously low price for this. I said if somebody was buying it at the 50% off from the publisher, it cost less than this lunch that I had in a local area place the other day. So I hope that people will find a way to have it spread and really help people see this disease with more hope than we usually get. It's a very positive view of it.
Well, thank you, Kathy, so much for sharing this with us today. And I'd like to thank our audience for joining us today. And I'd like to invite you to learn more about future shows that eCare Diary will be hosting, and to sign up for the newsletter that we offer. And that can be done by visiting the website at www.ecarediary.com. Bye now.